Coming to you live on Facebook and so starting out, I wanted to talk a little bit in our first hang try and appreciate a ride. On our next segment, we'll be talking a little bit about why the Colts won't win the division. And really it's a few good reasons. I'll sit down and break each one down and we'll just get the opinion and go from there. Next up, we'll be talking about the potential 2021 Rookies of the Year. 10 players, I think, are going to be the ones that are really going to have a lot of spotlights on them, and which ones I think will be at the top of the list at the end of the season. And then we'll also have, coming up in the fourth segment, for our next one, we'll be talking about the 5 players getting ready to cash in on the next NFL season. These are going to be the guys that I feel like are probably going to get an extension sometime down the road this year or possibly even next year. We'll discuss who that'll be, and we'll go and try and figure out which team might be interested, especially who has the highest salary cap going into next year. And finally, since we had a really good discussion about Madden yesterday, I felt it would be good to bring up another lost NFL treasured game, NFL BLITZ. We'll sit and reminisce about that one for a few minutes. But first, let's get going. Welcome to the Power Hour. I'm your host, Michael Bishop. Let's get into it. It seems like Tom Brady's never going to retire, but eventually he will. I mean, at some point, we all have to just figure that one day, just like every player that goes through it, will be told they can't play the game anymore for whatever reason, through fashion or design. And with Tom Brady, he's been an anomaly. He's the guy that just came out of the league out of nowhere. He came out of Michigan, drafted in the 6th round, 199th pick overall. I believe it was 6 quarterbacks taken before him. And lo and behold, Drew Bledsoe gets hurt his second year. And Tom Brady's handed the reins, and the rest is history. You really just have to just understand, it's crazy the way the whole story just became what it was. I don't think there's ever been a situation in the NFL or any sport for that matter where you've seen a player come from such a low pick, work his way up the draft, work his way up the board, up the depth chart, and get the opportunity to finally have his chance to play in some games because of an injury to their already starter. You really just have to understand, I don't think we may ever see another situation like this again. I don't think for any second that you could even fathom how crazy it is, just the whole story of Tom Brady just unraveled in our laps. And through everything, and even through some of the controversy that he's brought, it's just amazing to me that he's shown that he truly is possibly and arguably maybe the greatest player who's played this game. Controversy on the back burner, I mean, what can you say that he hasn't accomplished? He's really gone out there and just tried picking up what he get. He's been to 10 Super Bowls. He's won 7. He's won Super Bowls with multiple teams. His career's possibly won in Tampa Bay, along with a couple of statues. That's not too far-fetched. It's just amazing to me. You look at just how everything transpired. Once again, it's it's head scratching at best. I'd really have to go down the line in any sport and try and find a player that really just came out of nowhere and just dominated on the level that he did. Especially the fact where everyone had called Brady a system quarterback, and he had the opportunity to go somewhere else and end up winning a Super Bowl pretty much playing the way he wanted to play and running the plays he wanted to play. Bruce Arians a pretty laid back coach. He knows the X's and O's part, and he knows when he has a player of the kind of talent that Tom Brady has, he's going to let the guy do what he has to do. And it's no surprise to me that they won a Super Bowl. I mean, everything just fell in place and it worked out. But it's eventually going to come down to whenever Brady decides to leave. And I don't think he'll play much longer. I really think maybe he's got maybe another 2 years in him if he can stay healthy. And even that 2-year run's a stretch because a lot of things can happen. I mean, every player at some point knows when it's time to stop. Brett Favre got thrown to frozen concrete ground in Minnesota in a meaningless game in December and was concussed and basically said, yeah, this is time for me to hang it up. Peyton Manning's final season in Denver was a hard one to watch. You really just felt like he had given everything he could, and just the wear and tear was starting to show. He had done so much. He had put his body through so much abuse, and it was at that point where his body just said, I just can't keep up with you anymore. And it showed on the playing field. And it showed in his stats. I mean, it was probably one of the worst statistical years that he had had, possibly since his first year in the league. But no matter what happens, eventually every player down the line is going to be told that they can't play the game. Or they're going to have to decide for themselves that it's just not worth the risk anymore. And the fact that Tom Brady has kept himself just insanely healthy and in very good shape and in football shape for most of his career, it just shows, the determination that people have, especially when the chips are stacked against them, that when they have that opportunity, they're going to take the most of it and they're going to put 110% in everything that they do. And I think that's really the best way to describe what Tom Brady was and what his legacy is. He was the guy that basically had all the odds against him. And then when he started to become the guy, he definitely got pushback from some, and he definitely kind of felt like there was always going to be a debate between him and certain other quarterbacks, especially as his career went on. And I think one of the things that's really easy to just make a determination about is Tom Brady just knew he wanted to try and set himself apart from all the other quarterbacks. Especially in the era where you're going to be linked in with Peyton Manning. You're going to be linked in with Drew Brees. You're going to be linked in with Ben Roethlisberger. You're going to be linked in with Joe Flacco. You're going to be linked in with a lot of other quarterbacks that you played against. And as healthy as he stayed, he knew if he could have that opportunity to continue playing and to try and catch some of those records and really just put himself on top. I can't be mad at a guy that wants to go out while they've got the ability to do so and make themselves number one at what they do. In life, and we to just say that Tom Brady should have just retired and hung it up a long time ago. I mean, there have been instances that I have said that. I remember the first time he got hurt in the 2008 season. I felt that might have been the start of the end. Then there was the year that they went 9-7 for the first time in a long time, and they missed the postseason. That felt like that was the start of the end. And then there was not a few years ago where they lost their season opener to Tampa Bay. That felt like it was really the start of the end. But it never came to fruition because it just feels like every time he comes close to failure, he just remotivates himself. And Brady continues to put himself on the highest pedestal that he can. So for someone that wants to try and excel at their craft, I can't be mad at that. People loved Michael Jordan because he went out and he gave 110%. While there's not a lot of flaws in Jordan, though, where there have been some in Brady in some people's cases, I still think just throughout his career, put that aside, he still played a hell of a career. And that should be noted. And if he's noted as the GOAT as it goes forward in history books, then I think that's fair. He's rightfully earned that. I think he cemented that legacy when the Super Bowl against the Atlanta Falcons was basically the whole changing point of that. I felt that in that game, he truly elevated himself to another level of which we've only seen other players do very few times. Instances when Joe Montana did the drive against the Cincinnati Bengals, that was a career-defining moment. That was a career-defining game. And I felt in that instance, Tom Brady's career-defining game was that one against the Atlanta Falcons. So in the long term, I feel that Tom Brady's records and his stats, they're going to measure up to basically what he's put out there. And it's fair to have the argument, is he the true GOAT? And a lot of people will debate that for years to come. But in reality, I just feel it's a hard argument, especially when you have the numbers to back it up. So in the long term of things, I think we'll just have to just wait and see until Tom Brady decides to make the call and leave the game. And eventually he will. But all I can say is just enjoy the time while you have to watch him. Because honestly, it's amazing when they leave, it changes everything. Someone steps up and there's just that kind of void. And eventually it'll happen. I mean, it may take years for some people to even just fathom that Tom Brady will retire, but it will happen. So just enjoy the ride. There won't be much more. And at least you can say that you witnessed it. For good, better, or worse. Well, all right, guys, that's the end of our first opening segment. We'll take a quick 30-second break, and when we come back, I'm going to break down to you the Indianapolis Colts, why they won't win the AFC South. This is the Power Hour. I'm your host, Michael Bishop. We'll be back in 30. The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming to you on YouTube and Facebook. Welcome back to segment 2. This is the Power Hour, and I'm your host, Michael Bishop. Thank you for joining us on this Friday evening. Hope you're having a great evening. We're definitely glad. And then to segment 2, the Indianapolis Colts. They will not win the AFC South. It seems like it's an easy pick to give the Indianapolis Colts the doubt that they can possibly win this division. And after all, you've got two teams that are in a rebuild mode, and the other team, the Tennessee Titans, are right on their level, but others just seem to just kind of dismiss them. And while it's easy to dismiss a team, especially after a full transition on the defense that they've gone after, I just laugh at that. It's easy to go after the team just because it looks good on paper doesn't mean it transitions into success on the field. And stats is where As good as Indy looks on paper and in progressive, basically, predictions of some of these analysts in the NFL, it just seems the argument is that despite Tennessee having a rebuilt defense being the Achilles heel of what would cost them the division, it would also say that it's another reason for them to not have the kind of success that Indy might have this season is that Julio Jones won't gel with the offense. And that's just laughable to me. Really, the first number one reason why the Indianapolis Colts won't win the division is Tennessee's not going anywhere. And that's the simplest explanation. Granted, last year they split their series one game, one game. But all in all, Tennessee definitely charged out ahead at the end of the season like they always do. They've been doing that, especially the last few years. They're one of the teams that generally plays better football once late November and December hits. Whereas the Colts, it's a mixed bag. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But to just say Tennessee's going to just hand them the division is just laughable. Tennessee went out and rebuilt their defense. They restructured the entire secondary. They went out and brought in Julio Jones. What was the biggest move the Colts made? Maybe a handful of signings. But in retrospect, they're trying to save money. They've got 2 big contracts coming up if they want to keep these players. And right now at this point, they're in decision-making mode. And the Colts have to decide, we knew we were going to have to save money in order to pay some of our premier guys. But the biggest problem is Tennessee went out and restructured deals and made moves. They were aggressive. Teams that usually go out and spend a little money on players that they need and on things that they need to improve, generally it shows pretty good judgment. And in the long term of things, spending money isn't going to always fix problems. But sometimes you have to be aggressive. And the one thing Tennessee has done, I think, better than Indy is being aggressive in the market. Generally, if they want to try and make a move for a player, or if they try and make a move in the draft, they've done it. Which not to say Indy hasn't. DeForest Buckner is a good example for Indy, and I think it paid off. But at the same time, we'll have a Tennessee's not going to about Tennessee that even remotely says they're going to lose more games just because of a few moves in the secondary. If anything, they improve themselves even more on the offense. And that's generally going to be a scary thought for Indy. Especially the fact that they know they're going to play a team that generally gets better at the end of the season. And most of the games that Indy has to play Tennessee will be before the season's over. So by the time November rolls around, they would have already played twice anyway. So that'll basically... Now, second, and one reason I don't think that they'll win the division is just they haven't found the receiver to be the guy. Now, T.Y. Hilton has been the guy on and off. And he's had an amazing career in 17. 15, 10, and 15. So he's missed a game here and there, but then there was the season he missed at least 6 games. And generally, he's been most of his career. He's dealt with injuries a lot. And here was this Colts receiving scores. I have them right here. He's put up 394. You had Pascal put up 629. T.Y. Hilton put up 762. And Doyle put up 251. And Indy definitely likes to spread the ball around. And that's fine. That works for them. But they need a guy that's going to be a home run hitter. And the guy that they were hoping was going to be the guy that was going to be opposite of T.Y. Hilton. He was going to be the guy that went along and closest thing was 2019 until a week 14 injury, a broken foot, put him out. And then in 2020, I believe it was week 2, putting him on the IR. The Colts are putting a lot of their eggs in the Paris Campbell basket. They're trying to see if he'll work out. And I really felt like that was one of the players that keeps coming up in discussions that the Colts have to see if they'll work. And I don't want to see guys not have success because of injuries. But he's already... And the fact that they happened so close together, it's just crazy to think that he's going to break through this year and be the guy. Basic knowledge would say you've really got to try and spread the ball around a little more, or maybe try and make a play after a receiver that could probably come in and help long term. And the Colts are, once again, it comes down to them saving money. And I think that'll hurt them in the long run. They're trying to save money for their players, but at the same time, you're going to have to make decisions like this. I felt that they really didn't get a lot of offensive playmakers in the draft like I think he's really just... You generally have to find a guy that can be a physical threat down the field. And you've got some good playmakers, but I just don't think they're going to be the guys that can just get the long ball on a full game every night. Other than T.Y. Hilton, I mean, it's really a mixed bag. I mean, Pascal's had some good games, but he's not had that breakthrough game. So, in the long run, I feel that's really going to hinder them going forward. And the final reason the Colts won't win the division in 2021, it's Carson Wentz. And this is the one stat that no one is talking about. I have people on the sports media channels and in the news giving him praise and saying that he'll fit in the system, that Frank Wright is going to basically like right the ship with him. He'll get himself together. Carson Wentz is a fumbling machine. Lot. Since 2016, after his injury in Philly, you were looking at 35 fumbles. 17 of those were recovered by the defense. In what world is fumbling the ball almost 60 times going to translate into wins? He has a good touchdown interception ratio. Yes, he can throw the ball down the field. He has a good arm. But if you can't protect the ball, how are you supposed to win games? Especially in situations, if you fumble the ball where you have a chance to win a game, what's that going to do for you? You're basically asking your defense to work a little harder. And there's still some holes on the defensive line. Yes, you have DeForest Buckner. Yes, you have Kwity Paye. But that's really all you've got right now. You've got a fairly good secondary. You've got a very elite linebacker and a couple other good ones. But you're asking a lot of the defense. Generally, I just look at Carson Wentz. And a guy, if you can't hold on to the ball, you're not going to win a lot of games. That's all there is to it. To me, the fact that you fumbled 58 times in your career, that's huge red flag stuff. And that's stuff that just doesn't easily get fixed. On his entire career. And it just seems to be just swept under the rug. And that is not a small problem. That's a very huge problem. And if you're in an already division race that's going to be neck and neck, you can't afford those kind of mistakes. Might have a chance to make this work. Fumbling problems just don't go away. They take a lot of work. They take a lot of mental thought. They take a lot of just retraining yourself to taking snaps or running with the ball. But it's a problem he has not corrected. And it has only gotten worse. Those aren't problems that easily get fixed. And that's something Indy has to understand. That, yes, he could very well be the guy. But fumbling 58 times in your career, that's not something that you can build through a positive aspect. Eventually down the road, that'll cost games. And Indy has to understand that that's the other side of the coin too. And you can't address the elephant in the room. It's a huge problem. And that's the end of segment 2. We'll take a quick 30-second breather. And when we come back, the Rookie of the Year debate. Who I feel like are the best 10 players out there right now. And which one I think will end up holding the award after the year's done. I'm Michael Bishop, and this is the Power Hour. It's the Power Hour. We're live on YouTube and Facebook. Welcome back. It's great to have you here on this Friday evening. We've been talking a lot of great sports. We've been talking a lot of football. Gotta love Friday. Definitely gotta feel pretty good. Hope you're enjoying a cold one right now and just relaxing and enjoying the show. Jumping into segment three, we're going to talk about the potential Rookie of the Year candidates and who will be hosting the trophy possibly in 2021. So it was a pretty good class this draft year, and there was a lot of debate, especially after one and two, who were going to go next. And you had a slew of really good players. We had some trades go down that really kind of changed the landscape for some teams. And really, along the lines, you had a couple of surprises where you felt, hey, there's going to be some teams I think that are really reaching on some of these, but maybe in the long run it might work out. So, right now, I'm going to break down the top 10 Rookies of the Year candidates, and we'll start on the bottom of who I think most likely won't win the award, and we'll end with the one who I think will. Number 10, I'm going to go with. I'm still trying to figure out what Tua Tagovailoa is as a quarterback. And it's really hard to pinpoint what he is as a pro player. In certain aspects, he's undersized, and he's still trying to find himself as a player. I think with a full off season, it's definitely going to help. But along the lines, you still have to teach him how to read defense. Especially any have more to pick up. Where I'd say a lot of everything that he did was kind of a Cliff Notes version. But you really kind of feel, especially if Waddle, things will improve on the receiving side of things. But I don't expect him to break out and have a major year. I think there's going to be a learning curve. I think you'll definitely even see him probably play on special teams a little bit. But eventually, I think he'll move up and get more touches as he gets better. Number 9 would be Najee Harris. I felt the Pittsburgh Steelers kind of reached on this one, but at the same time, when you need a running game and you lack a running game, and there's a really good running back on the board, you really want to try and see if that's worth the risk. And for the Pittsburgh Steelers, so it felt like it could be a possible good fit, and we'll definitely see how it goes. He's got a pretty good offensive line in front of him for the time being. But right now, even with Ben Roethlisberger under center, the Pittsburgh Steelers are always going to be a throwing team. They're not going to run the ball like they used to. So I think Harris could possibly get up to maybe 800 or 900 yards, depending on how everything goes on some of these games. If Ben gets hurt again, that pop could go up. But right now, I think number 9 would fit well for Najee Harris. Number 8 would be Zach Wilson of the New York Jets. And yes, he's got some great weapons next to him. He's got Corey Davis. He's got Elijah Moore, who also could be in the mix for. And he's going to be more solid offensive line around him, which I think they will in a couple of years. And especially out of all the, you're asking a lot from a younger guy, but he does have some help. But out of a growing pain scenario, I feel Zach Wilson's probably going to have a lot of them, more than any of the other quarterbacks. Number 7, I would go with Kyle Pitts with Atlanta. I really felt that it was going to be a good fit. And you know, it's hard to replace Julio Jones, but Calvin Ridley will do a good job. But you need someone to take pressure off of Calvin Ridley. Kyle Pitts is that guy. Now, while he's not a great blocking tight end, he's still the guy that can go out and make plays. And I think that's something Atlanta needs to do. They need to continue to be versatile, but they also need to make quick strikes. And I think that's what you're going to get with Kyle Pitt. I think he's aggressive enough to get down the field. He's going to get a lot of touchdowns this year. Matt Ryan definitely has the kind of security blanket that be creative. He's going to get his playmakers involved. So I don't see a problem with Kyle Pitts being at the 7th position. But like other players, I think he'll have some growing pains. He's definitely going to have some matchup problems, especially with the schedule that they have to face. But along those lines, I think Kyle Pitts falls in nice at 7. Number 6 would be Trey Lance. And he's going to step in and start. And he's got a good team around him. But is he going to be ready for the spotlight? He's been in a smaller school. He's been in a smaller setting. So Trey Lance is definitely stepping up on the big stage now. And while he's performed more admirable than expectations ever said that he would, I still feel at the same time you're going to see a guy with a lot of growing pains. He's raw right now. But that's the kind of quarterback that Kyle Shanahan likes. He likes guys that he can work with and mold. And I think Trey Lance is going to be one of those 2 to 3 year guys. I think Shanahan's going to let him cut loose a little. He's going to let him understand that he has to try and run the system that Shanahan has in place, but he's going to let his playmaker make plays. And I think he'll be successful in that aspect. But to me, I think Trey Lance will be the kind of guy that will improve within a 2 or 3 year span. And that's a pretty good spot putting him at 6. Moving into top 5, I'm going to go Jamar Chase at 5 with Cincinnati. A lot of controversy in this pick. A lot of people felt that the offensive line needed to be addressed. That Joe Burrow's future was critical. That he had to have guys protecting his blind side, and it just didn't get addressed until later. Adding a playmaker of Jamar Chase's stature, though, especially to replace A.J. Green at this point, you know that this is a Bengals team that is trying to elevate itself and get Burrow more comfortable. They're bringing in people that he's worked with, and it very well could work. I think that there's already a good relationship between the two, so you're not going to have to worry about them getting to know one another. They already do. You feel confident enough that Chase can very well get over 1,000 yards. He's got great hands. He's a great playmaker. He's the kind of guy, once he gets the ball, he cuts the Jets on and he's gone. And I think this will be a move that can pay off for the Bengals maybe in a year or two. I think he's going to be in a lot of highlight reels, and he's definitely going to get a lot of attention from opposing defenses. And he'll get better as time goes on. So right now, Chase to me, perfect at that spot. I think 5's the right number for him at this point. 4 right now would be Devontae Smith. And I think Devontae Smith, if he can get a steady weight on him and put a little more muscle on, I think he could be one of the most dynamic receivers in the league. But it's easy to see why teams are scared off. Not everybody's going to go after a 175-pound receiver. That's a scary thought, especially when your defenders weigh about 190 to maybe even 200, and especially 50. Smith, to me, when I watch highlights of him, he's the guy that just goes out and he knows what he's doing. He's confident. He makes other players better. He's the guy that you want to haul out there and catch the ball on a long stride, or he's the guy you want or playing slants. He's the guy I think is going to get a lot of attention, and it's for a good reason. I felt after the draft he had a chip on his shoulder, and I like guys that get undervalued. They just come into the league, they're mad, they're ready to make impacts, and I look at this and I see it as a great opportunity for him to go and really prove a lot of people wrong. So I think that that's very much the case. Number 3, surprisingly, is Justin Fields of Chicago, who I had trouble remembering his name. So yesterday, that was my fault. I own that. So it was Justin Fields. Justin Fields, my bad. But I think you're the third best player in the Rookie of the Year conversation. And I feel Chicago, with the right guy under quarterback, they can get back to the playoffs. I don't think it's out of the question. I think if Chicago really just gets him comfortable and gets him into the situation to come in and play, I think Chicago's got a great chance at getting back to the playoffs with Justin Fields. I mean, let's be honest, Andy Dalton's not going to be the guy. You know, if anything, I think Justin Fields is going to come in. I think he's going to have a great camp, and I think he'll start. From what I've heard, he's been doing really good, and I think just from that standpoint, get a lot of head looks, and he's going to get a lot of people talking about him. Besides Devontae Smith. But Justin Fields, to me, I feel he's going to be versatile. He's going to use his legs. He's going to do whatever he can. Chicago's hoping that they've brought in a player that could possibly have Patrick Mahomes' tendencies. He won't be Mahomes, but have Mahomes' tendencies. And I think that's a good scenario. So in the long run, I would definitely feel that Fields fits in at the third spot there. Number 2 right now would be time. But I feel Mac Jones where Jones has so much around him that it's almost a too big to fail scenario. And if he has that opportunity, he's the guy that's got the most weapons on offense. He's got a fairly good offensive line blocking for him. They've got a slew of running. Jones is going to have to learn his job. He gets that opportunity, and just from the standpoint that he gets in plays, I think he could get up as high as 2 in the Rookie of the Year runnings. I think his arm's good enough. I think he makes good decisions on the pocket. Now, he is a pocket passer. The league has to run the ball. I mean, passer if they're well protected and they can make decisions quickly. And from what I've seen from Mac Jones, I think he can. And number 1, and more than likely for the It's just going to come down to just consistent. Find his consistency. And it's building just the language between the receivers and the offensive coordinator. Is just one of the brightest young players that I've got to witness play college football. I think from a standpoint, he's going to be able to come in and really help the Jaguars. I don't think they're going to win more than 3 or 4. What Jacksonville needs. They need a guy that can come in and command respect on the field. They probably aren't going to beat the brakes off a lot of people. They're probably going to have a lot that wins than they do have just wins. But I feel as the season goes, Lawrence will get in a better groove and come a little easy. And if they can build around him properly, I think Trevor Lawrence is going to end up winning the Rookie of the Year. I feel that he's got all the tools around him to be successful, and I think he's going to do whatever it takes to get to the next level. And that's what Jacksonville needs right now. They need somebody that's going to change the face of the franchise. And Trevor Lawrence has enough moxie, and he has enough guts, and he has enough will to win. And Jacksonville needs so much of that. Rookie of the Year. No surprise, but it's an easy decision. All right, so that is the end of segment 3. We'll take a quick 30-second break, and we'll be right back. And when we come back, there's going to be a few contracts up in the NFL, and who's going to get paid? We'll break down some of the players. The Power Hour is on the air. Show. We've had a great show so far for you. Great discussion after great discussion, and we're going to keep it going with segment 4. Segment 4 being called The Next Big Contracts. I've got 6 players who are lined up for a big payday. Either going to happen before the season starts or going into the off season into the 2022 season. So breaking down for the next 6 players, let's start out with this. On the Sport Track page for the salary cap, going into 2022, the top 5 teams with the most money to spend will be as following. The Indianapolis Colts will have $81 million. Pittsburgh Steelers will have $76 million. The Washington football team will have $60 million, and the Denver Broncos will have $57 million. Putting those into play, you would definitely see that some of the players on this list are going to be very linked with the ones that have the most cap space. So breaking down the first player, we've got Jamal Adams from the Seattle Seahawks. After getting that huge trade from the Jets, Jamal Adams will only be 25 after that deal's over. And more than likely, Seattle wants to lock him down to a big-term deal. I could very much see him staying there. I think he's very comfortable with the defense and allowing change isn't something that he's really looking for right now, especially the fact where there's more consistency on the offense. You've got to like the fact that Adams knows that Seattle's possibly going to have a little more money to play with, and they know that that's one of the kids they're going to have to lock down. So Adams, I would definitely say he'll get his payday with Seattle, but it'll come to the expense of a structured contract. But the up would be Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills have finally found their quarterback of the future. After what seems like decades of cutting through just loss after down. So along those lines, you have to think the season begins. I think Buffalo's going to get this done through just some very carefully restructuring, through just bumping around a few numbers. It very well may be Josh Allen could possibly break the 170 to 200 million contract level. It's bound to be that high, and there's definitely going to be about 100 million guaranteed in money. Somewhere around those numbers, I think, would be sensible for Allen. You want to lock him up to at least an 8 or 9 year deal. It's not going to be Patrick Mahomes level, but you have to. TJ Watt from the Pittsburgh Steelers is the next play. For a team that just historically doesn't do a lot of. Is Pittsburgh just going to stick with what they. Or are they going to continue to draft talent to replace outgoing talent? TJ Watt is going to want to get paid, and his body of work speaks for it. But I don't see him coming back with Pittsburgh. If anything, I would possibly see maybe Denver going after him, especially if they decide to move on from Von Miller. So that's a very big possibility. I could definitely see TJ Watt being in a different jersey, but it'll really just come along the lines of who. Denver, I think, is a big possibility. Maybe even the Jets if he wanted to really get paid. So those would be the best. Even starts. I could even consider Lamar Jackson possibly getting up to about right around 200 to maybe 250 million, and possibly maybe around a 6 or 7 year deal. At this point, Jackson still shows that he's capable of winning games. Baltimore knows they're going to have to go in on a long-term scale of things. They're going to have to lock down their star because everybody's going to come courting him if they. I think Baltimore's going to move quickly and get this deal done, and Jackson will possibly have his deal before the season starts this year. I've got two for Indy, and it's no. And you've got Quentin Nelson. Both are critical pieces, and the reason why Indy's been saving money. Can they afford both? Will they pay both? That's the big question. And if I had to take a stab at it, I would say probably not. And the reason is Indy has other holes they're going to have to fill after the. You're going to have to find a replacement for him if he decides to opt out or retire. You're going to have to find a lot of playmakers, especially if you plan on spending. Guy to me who's going to spend a ton of money on two players. They know they have to try and keep at least one of them. And if I had to guess, I'd feel Nelson's the smarter bet. Because you have to have an elite offensive line and an elite offensive lineman. And the Colts have done everything they can to build a line, and Carson Wentz has to have protection. I feel losing Leonard would really hurt Indy, but at the same time, it's an easy decision because he's probably going to get about maybe close to a $54 to $60 million deal, maybe even more. But in the long term of things, Nelson's the safer bet. So if Leonard were to leave, once again, I think Denver would come to play. And with Washington having money, I think they could take a stab at it and try and go after him. And I think that would make an already really good defense even better. I mean, you've already got two great pass rushers and a pretty good piece in the middle. Put Leonard on that defense, that's scary. That's definitely a really good Ron Rivera run defense. So I would say, once again, Nelson gets paid, stays in Indy. Leonard possibly in Indy. Washington and Denver seem like the most logical spots. And then finally, you'd have to look at Baker Mayfield. Cleveland is going to have to decide if they want to invest full-time in Baker Mayfield. And Mayfield's numbers just kind of head-scratching. Here for Cleveland. They know they're going to have to make a decision on Baker Mayfield. Is he going to be the guy going forward? And in retrospect, are you going to want to invest a lot of money in Baker Mayfield, especially with these NFL quarterback contracts continuing to skyrocket? Josh Allen's going to get paid. Lamar Jackson's going to get paid. Baker Mayfield is to 200. Probably what he's going to push for. Will Cleveland bite? It's very hard to say right now, but they might have to because their options are so thin. Even in the draft next year, there's maybe two quarterbacks that you might not even have a good inkling about. But in the retrospect of things, Cleveland knows they're going to Mayfield. But if I had to make a deal with him, I'd give him about a 3-year deal, possibly worth around 90, 97. Know that it's possibly going to have a little wiggle room. Now, will it happen? Probably not. That's just my 2 cents on the subject. He's probably going to get a lot more than that, but I'll be real with you. Cleveland is very, very antsy about paying that kind of long-term money to Baker Mayfield. 20 Baker Mayfield and not the 29. Segment to go. Gonna take a quick 30-second breather. And when we come back, we'll break down NFL Blitz, one of the lost treasures of the video games. This is the Power Hour, back in 30. It's a when life gives you lemons, make lemonade kind of thing. So, no big deal. So, in our final segment, and I'll spend a few minutes on this, since I know we're running short, but well, of course that happened. Learning curve, guys. Still working on things. We'll get there. Anyway, NFL Blitz was always the game that everybody just had a good opinion about. It was the game you wanted to play in real life to get away with everything. And that was the best part about it. It was just football surreal life. And it's always fun when you have games that just don't take themselves too seriously. I always enjoyed when you could just really just cut loose and just do your own thing. And that was the best thing about NFL Blitz. Along the line with Madden still growing in popularity and really not breaking out to play. Everybody that I knew, especially when there was video game arcades, one of the most popular games, shoot 'em up games. That was always the one that was getting lined up for, well, in Mortal Kombat. I can't forget Mortal Kombat. That's not fair. But Blitz was always just different in its own. Laughed at because you just couldn't take it seriously, but it was also the game that it didn't have to take itself seriously. It was just in an era where you're probably never going to have a game like that again because there's just so much controversy tied to it, especially just it's never going to really that it used to because eventually they want to add things to it. And with Blitz, it was more for it. It always seemed like that was just a better thing about just having the option of playing Blitz. You didn't have to take it serious. It wasn't an over. The in a different format, in a more adult setting where there's just a lot of steroid taking and just all kinds of things in there that just where you're like, okay, this is just giving me kind of a Grand Theft Auto vibe, but I don't. You do you, I guess, Blitz. It tried and it just didn't work. And which is why I think if it tried to revive, it possibly wouldn't have that kind of following that it would now. The nostalgic of it is what really sells. And if they did revive it, they'd have to just do it in that format. It's not a very complicated formula. Just let people just cut loose. That's one of the fun things about playing games like that. You don't have to take it serious. And that was one of the fun aspects of playing Blitz. It was a game that you could play at any level, and you could play all out, and it was fine. There was nothing bad about it, except for the fact that you just ran out of quarters. So if they would bring it back just in that aspect for the nostalgic sense of it, I think that'd be great. But in today's world, I just don't see it. It probably never would. And if you're one of the lucky few that still has an old console and they still have the original Blitz, I just say enjoy it. You'll probably never have another game experience like that. And that's definitely worth holding on to, especially in times where things get older and your memories get a little older and you just remember the best part of it. It's the fun that you had and the fun times that you shared with others. Well, guys, thank you for joining me on the Power Hour. It was a great show today. I will be back tomorrow night at 7. And that will be our final show until we lead up to the Monday night show, where we will be on every Monday at 7. I'm glad everybody had a great time. This show continues to grow, and it's thanks to you, and I will continue to keep doing this, and your support is well appreciated, and it's because of you that this show is and continues to get the feedback and just the love, and it's much appreciated. So I'm Michael Bishop for the Power Hour. Have a good tonight and an even better tomorrow. Take care.